Hi there, everyone. This is Sharon for another Conscious Sharon moment. And so, for this Conscious Sharon moment, the focus will be on sacred space and ultimately sacred space to create sacred moments. And so, a lot of times we hear, um, the talk around having safe spaces so that people can talk and unload, upload, vent. And it's really to have sometimes an emotional release. And that emotional release can come in two forms. It can come in talking, verbally communicating, sharing, but it can also just come in the moment of silence as well. And so let me ask you a question. When you think of sacred space, or safe spaces, like what comes to your mind when you think of that? It's like, are you a person that are in need of a safe or sacred space? And are you a person who can give or provide a sacred space? Because it's twofold. Like when it comes to self care, and my definition of self care is that, self reflection, that self awareness, that taking care of yourself, and movement, and sitting still, and, being able to breathe. Life begins, when we're able to breathe. We heal when we're able to breathe and have those moments. And so, when it comes to us as individuals, each of us need our own sacred space, safe space within ourselves, someplace, like when you're home, someplace that you can go, you can be by yourself. And then when you're a family, because a lot of times when it comes to family, and I just say just in general, and being in the same household living, everybody need that time to themselves, that time. I know sometimes when I see on social media, I see mothers and fathers, husbands and wives, they'll say, yeah, when I get off work, when I go home, a lot of times what I do, I may just sit in the car for a few moments. Or you have, most of the time it'd be mothers that would say, yeah, sometimes I need to go into the closet and just be to myself. And a lot of times people, the other person who are around, can take it personal in that it has something to do with them. No. Now the other side of that, and I would say, yeah, if you're in your car, and parents sometimes they do need to go to the closet in order to create that sacred space for them, because everybody need that. Because again, when it comes to the nervous system, it is not made to always be active. It is not made to always be moving. It's not made to always be interacting. As much as we as human that we need each other, we need ourselves more. Okay. So the other side of that is the impact of that. And one thing that I have learned, and I've seen it in social media. I can also remember watching a video of Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith. He's one of my favorite spiritual leader. And yeah, I definitely, when I first heard him, I'm like, oh, who is this man? Where he's been all my life? Because whew, only thing I could say is just when it comes to spirituality, I mean, he definitely talks a lot about, put it like this, he's a wonderful spiritual teacher. So he was saying one time, it's like, especially when people are going through something, they really do need that time. And then what it does is that for people who live in the same household, family, friends, whoever it may be, is that it does have an impact on that person. But what it does is it brings up those parts of ourselves that we may need healing from, those parts of ourselves that need to be nurturing. And so I look at it twofold, in the sense is that we all need our sacred space, but then we need sacred space for ourselves? And then also, how do we create sacred spaces with each other, if that makes sense? So it's like, yes, I'm like, I'm a type of person, I definitely need time for myself, not time for myself to re-energize and things like that, especially by being an introvert. But I enjoyed that time for myself. However, I also enjoy time with other people. So, like, how can we marry that? How can we merge that when it comes to family and friends? And it don't even have to be in the same household. It's like when you have good friends, same sex friends, opposite, however it may be, it's like having connection with other people are just as important of having connection with yourself. So how do we integrate that? How do you integrate the sacred spaces? It's like the personal sacred space and the, even when I say intimate, not in when it comes to relations, intimate relationships per se, but intimacy when it comes to family, intimacy when it comes to friends, because they all need to be nurtured, and especially when you're living in the same household. And there have been plenty of times when I've heard and seen, parents, they say, yes, have a day or a time with this child, like especially when there's more than one child, of course, in that they will make sure that they spend a good amount of time just with that one child. And that's a way to really connect and a way to get to know that child and for that child to get to know you, and things like that. And I think as adults, we think that this stuff is just for kids. No, it's for humans. But I think because of the busyness and when we protect our personal sacred space, that we forget about, I'm going to say, the social sacred space. Sometimes we can forget that, and that's just as important. And it's like it's multiple layers. I mean, it really is, because it's kind of like, we yearn for connections with people, and sometimes we think we learn connections with intimacy or intimate relationship, and that's not so. We really yearn connection generally with people, you know what I'm saying? And so again, how do you integrate personal sacred space with social sacred space with your family, with your friends? Again, with family, they may do something individually with a child, but then also as a family. And then I would say a lot of times with most families, they do it together, in which that is important too. But it's just as important to have that sacred space just with that one child. And then when it comes to couples, it's really important for couples to have the date night, but also for couples to give each other the personal space so they can have that personal sacred space, and like each person, like each family, is different, or each couple is different. I might hear so many wonderful things of how, some people, like for some couples, let's say when the husband gets home from work, sometimes the wife may know that that person, need that time for themselves, and then they can interact. And then sometimes some husbands knows when the wife gets home from work, sometimes she may need to have an emotional release, either by talking or just really just by being in the same space. So again, when it comes to this human and being human, sometimes it can be kind of complicated. But this is why self-care is so essential. This is why it's really, really important for us to dig deep within ourselves. And when things come up, they come up for us, but they don't only come up for us, they come up for each of us on an individual level, but also for us as a social being, as a community. And that community the community can be, you know your home. The community can be, out there outside of your home into the world, And so when it comes to family, when it comes to friends, honor, give people space to be able to have the personal sacred space, but then also figure out how you can have social sacred space as well, because that is just as important, and it's not about somebody impeding on your personal time or personal space. It's also about us being able to give. It's almost like in this self-care world, it's so important for us to be able to set up to protect our boundaries, but then at the same time, are we protecting it so much to the fact that we are really locking people out? So all thing I say, you know, it's not about balancing per se, but it's almost about integrating, because sometimes we need that space. We need that personal time. We need that space, however time it may take. And sometimes people can say, oh, well, that's just a sacrifice I gotta make. And people just need to understand and just don't take it personal and things like that. Yes, true. And I mean, I'm a complete duality person that is just not one thing. It's, again, when it comes to being human, when it comes to relating to others, there are layers to it. But the main thing is, at the end of the day, is how we relate to ourselves, and how we relate to ourselves really determines how we relate to other people. And so I myself, I hope that by me taking the time for me to have my personal, sacred space, that it doesn't impede on others. And then if it does, for us to be able to, communicate about that, to have an understanding about that. And the same way, it's like, if someone is in need of their own personal space, sacred space, then where I'm able to honor that. But then at the same time, it's kind of like, okay, what about the social sacred space? And so again, just remember, when it comes to healing, it's a day by day thing. It's not a one stop, it's a journey. And then it's a wonderful way to really explore ourselves. And when we have loving and supportive people in our life, and we're able to share the social sacred space, so that we can really, I think, it really kind of helps that journey as well. I put it like this: there are some things, yes, we need to figure it out on our own, but then there are some things that we can figure out as a community, when it comes to family, when it comes to friends, when it comes to, the community at large, the world at large. And so, how are you with your, single sacred space, your personal sacred space, and your social sacred space? Just remember that we really do need both. And it's about figuring out how we can integrate those things, because sometimes, again, we can be protecting our personal space too much, that it literally can lock out the ones that we love, lock out the ones that who support us, and we don't want to do that either. And even though for each person is their own journey as well, but we're in this life together. So I hope that, this conscious sharing moment, resonated with you, to give you the opportunity to kind of reflect and dig deep within yourself, so that you too can really, 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 find ways to, not struggle, find ways to have peace within yourself. But above all, I kind of feel like we can have all the peace within ourselves, but if we're not able to share that peace with others, then what's the point, And it's not just to be able to share it within the world. It starts where we are now, meaning with ourselves, with our family, with our friends, with our home, with the immediate community, and then the community at large. So where are you with your personal sacred space and your social sacred space. So, again, thanks for listening to another Conscious Sharing Moment. And check us out on YouTube. Check us out. Make sure you check the website, conscioussharing.com, for any upcoming events and things like that. And just be well in every way.